Hello friends, I am Aditi. Welcome to my channel Library Mouse. Today I am going to read a book, How to Develop Self-Confidence and Influence People by Public Speaking by Dale Carnegie. This book contains 12 chapters, so let's continue with chapter 8, How to Open a Talk. I once asked Dr. Lean Harold Hogg, formerly president of Northwestern University, what was the most important fact that his long experience as a speaker had taught him? After pondering for a minute, he replied, to get an arresting opening, something that will seize the attention immediately. He planned in advance almost the precise words of both his openings and closing. John Bright did the same thing. Gladstone did it, Webster did it, Lincoln did it. Practically every speaker with common sense and experience does it. But does the beginner? Seldom. Planning takes time, requires thought, demands willpower. Preparation is a painful process. Thomas Edison had this quotation from Sir Joshua Reynolds nailed on the walls of his plants. There is no expedient to which a man will not resort to avoid the real labor of thinking. The tyro usually trusts to the inspiration of the moment with the consequences that he finds. Beset with pitfall and with gain, the road he is to wander it. The late Lord Northcliffe, who fought his way up from a meagre weekly salary to being the richest and most influential newspaper owner in the British Empire, said that these 5 words from Pascal had done more to help him succeed than anything else he had ever read. First, to foresee is to rule. That is also a most excellent motto to have on your desk when you are planning your talk. Foresee how you are going to begin when the mind is fresh to grasp every word you utter. Foresee what impression you are going to leave last, when nothing else follows, to obliterate it. Ever since the days of Aristotle, books on this subject have divided the speech into 3 sections: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. Until comparatively recently, the introduction often was, and could really afford to be, as leisurely as a buggy ride. The speaker then was both a bringer of news and an entertainer. 100 years ago, he often filled the niche in the community that is filled today by the newspaper, the magazine, the radio, television, the telephone, the movie theater. But conditions have altered amazingly. The world has been made over. Inventions have speeded up life more in the last 100 years than they had formerly in all the ages since Belshazzar and Nebuchadnezzar. Automobiles, aeroplanes, radio, television. We are moving with increasing speed, and the speaker must fall in the line with the impatient tempo of the times. If you are going to use an introduction, believe me, it ought to be short as a billboard advertisement. This is about the tempo of the average modern audience. Got anything to say? Alright, let's have it quickly and with very little trimmings. No oratory. Give us the facts quickly and sit down. When Woodrow Wilson addressed Congress on such a momentous question as an ultimatum on submarine warfare, he announced his topic and centered the audience's attention on the subject with just 23 words. A situation has arisen in the foreign relations of the country, of which it is my planned duty to inform you very frankly. When Charles Seward addresses the Pennsylvania Society of New York, he strode right into the heart of his talk with his second sentence. Uppermost in the minds of American citizens today is dire question: what is the meaning of the existing slump in business and what of the future? Personally, I am an optimist. The sales manager for the National Cash Register Company opened one of his talks to his men in this fashion: only 3 sentences in this introduction, and they are all easy to listen to. They all have vigor and drive. You men who get the orders are the champs who are supposed to keep the smoke coming out of the factory chimney. The volume of smoke emitted from our chimney during the past 2 summer months hasn't been large enough to darken the landscape to any great extent. Now that the dog days are over and the business revival season has begun, we are addressing to you a short, sharp request on this subject. We want more smoke. But do inexperienced speakers usually achieve such commendable swiftness and succinctness in their openings? The majority of untrained and unskilled speakers will begin in one of two ways, both of which are bad. Let us discuss them forthwith. We are aware of opening with a so-called humorous story. For some lamentable reason, the noise often feels that he ought to be funny as a speaker. He may, by nature, mind you, be as solemn as an encyclopedia, utterly devoid of the lighter touch. Yet, the moment he stands up to talk, he imagines he feels, or ought to feel, the spirit of Mark Twain descending upon him. So he is inclined to open with a humorous story, especially if the occasion is an after-dinner affair. What happens? The chances are 20 to 1 that the narration, the manner of his newly turned raconteur, is as heavy as the dictionary. The chances are his stories don't click. In the immortal language of the immortal Hamlet, they prove very stale, flat, and unprofitable. If an entertainer were to misfire a few times like that before an audience that had paid for their seats, they would woo and shout, "Give him the hook." But the average group listening to a speaker is very sympathetic. So, out of sheer charity, they will do their best to manufacture a new chucklus, while deep in their hearts, they pity the would-be humorous speaker for his failure. They themselves feel uncomfortable. Haven't you witnessed this kind of passio time after time? In all the difficult realm of speech making, what is more difficult, more rare than the ability to make an audience laugh? Humor is a hair-trigger affair. It is so much a matter of individuality of personality. Remember, it is seldom the story that is funny of, by and in itself. It is the way it is told that makes it a success. 99 men out of 100 will fail woefully with the identical stories that made Mark Twain famous. Read the stories that Lincoln repeated in the taverns of the English Judicial District of Illinois. Stories that men drove miles to hear. Stories that men sat up all night to hear. Stories that, according to an eyewitness, sometimes caused the native to whoop and roll off their chairs. Read those stories aloud to your family and see if you conjure up a smile. Here is one Lincoln used to tell with the roaring success. Why not try it privately? Please not before an audience. A late traveler trying to reach home over the muddy roads of the Illinois parishes was overtaken by a storm. The night was black as ink. The rain descended as if some dam in the heavens had broken. Thunder rent the angry clouds like the explosion of dynamite. Chain lightning showed trees failing around. The roar of it was very nearly deafening. Finally, a crash more traffic, more trouble than any the helpless man had ever heard in his life, brought him to his knees. He was not given to praying usually, but "Oh Lord," he gasped, "if it is all the same to you, please give us a little more light and a little less noise." You may be one of those fortunately endowed individuals who has the rare gift of humor. If so, by all means cultivate it. You will be thrice welcome wherever you speak. But if your talent lies in other directions, it is folly, and it ought to be high treason for you to attempt to wear the mantle of Chomsky M.D. Were you to study his speeches and Lincoln's and job heads, you would probably be surprised at the few stories they told, especially in their openings. Edwin James Cattell confided to me that he had never told a funny story for the mere sake of humor. It had to be relevant, had to illustrate a point. Humor ought to be merely the frosting on the cake, merely the chocolate between the layers, not the cake itself. Strickland Gillian, one of the best humorous lecturers in these United States, made it a rule never to tell a story during the first 3 minutes of his talk. If he found that practice advisable, I wonder if you and I would not also. Must the opening then be heavy-footed, elephantian and excessively solemn? Not at all. Tickle and risibilities, if you can, by some local references, something anent the occasion or the remarks of some other speaker, observe some incongruity, exaggerated. That brand of humor is 40 times more likely to succeed than stale jokes about Pat and Mike, or a mother-in-law, or a god. Perhaps the easiest way to create merriment is to tell a joke on yourself. Haphazard yourself in some ridiculous and embarrassing situation that gets down to the very sensations of much humor. The Eskimos laugh even at a chap who has broken his leg. The Chinese chuckle over the dog that has fallen out of a second-story window and killed himself. We are a bit more sympathetic than that, but don't we smile at the fellow chasing his hat or sleeping on a banana skin? Almost anyone can make an audience laugh by grouping incongruous ideas or qualities as, for example, the statement of a newspaper writer that he hated children, tribe, and Democrats. Note how cleverly Rudyard Kipling raised laughs in this opening to one of his political talks in England. He is retailing here, not manufactured, anecdotes, but some of his own experiences and playfully stressing their incongruities. My lords, ladies and gentlemen, when I was a young man in India, I used to report criminal cases for the newspaper that employed me. It was interesting work because it introduced me to foragers and embezzlers and murderers and enterprising swordsmen of that kind. Sometimes, after I had reported their trials, I used to visit my friends in jail when they were doing their sentences. I remember one man who got off with a life sentence for murder. He was a clever, smooth-speaking chap, and he told me what he called the story of his life. He said, "Take it from me that when a man gets crooked, one thing leads to another until he finds himself in such a position that he has to put somebody out of the way to get straight again." Well, that exactly describes the present position of the cabinet. This is the way William Howard Taft managed a bit of humor at the annual banquet of the superintendents of the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. The beautiful part of it is this: he is humorous and pays his audience a gracious compliment at the same time. Mr. President and gentlemen of the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, I was out in the old home about 9 months ago. I heard an after-dinner speech there by a gentleman who had some trepidation in the making it, and he said he had consulted a friend of his who had a great deal of experience in making after-dinner speeches, which friend advised him that the best kind of audience to address as an after-dinner speaker was an audience intelligent and well-educated but half-tight. Now, all I can say is that this audience is one of the best audiences I have ever saw for an after-dinner speaker. Something has made up for the absence of that element that the remark implied. And I must think it is the spirit of the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. Here, this is half a part of chapter 8. In next video, we will continue this. Thank you so much for listening it, and I hope it is understandable to you. If you enjoy watching my videos, do like, subscribe and share with your family and friends. Thank you.